I'd like to talk to you today on the question, what is plagiarism? What plagiarism is and why it is wrong is distressingly simple. If you as a student undertake coursework, you're asked to answer certain exam questions or to produce certain research. You expect a grade to be credited to your transcript. Your work should not be credited to the transcript of Emily Dickinson. Likewise, it's not right that Emily's work should be credited to your transcript. Here is simultaneously the most accurate and concise definition of plagiarism I've found. It comes from the Harvard University Student Guide. Harvard students must read this before beginning. It's not a bad idea for non-Harvard students, I think, as well. Plagiarism is, and I quote, the act of either intentionally or unintentionally submitting work that was written by someone else. Now, having said that, there are several distinct types of plagiarism to which to pay attention. The first is verbatim plagiarism, word for word. The most direct, it involves submitting somebody else's words as if they were your own. So in this example, a hypothetical student named Dunning-Kruger takes text from a source, in this case, the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, copies it word for word, submits it as a term paper. This is unambiguously plagiarism. Nothing has changed if Mr. Kruger had mixed in some words of his own and put those in red. This is still verbatim plagiarism. If any portion of a written assignment is copied, verbatim plagiarism has occurred. However, verbatim plagiarism, the simplest, most basic kind, is not the only form. The essence of plagiarism, whatever form one finds it, is dishonesty. Verbatim plagiarism is merely stupid dishonesty. There's also what's known as mosaic plagiarism. Mosaic is, of course, a picture with little, bits and pieces cobbled together. Now, mosaic plagiarism may or may not also be verbatim. It consists, however, of stringing together the words or key ideas of others from multiple sources. There's some cute memes on the internet. Copy from one is plagiarism. Copy from many, it's research. No. The offense here is not the numbers, it's in the copying itself, no matter how many numbers. If two wrongs don't make a right, then five don't either. In this example, back to Mr. Kruger, he has now mixed texts from several sources, not just from the Stanford Encyclopedia, but also from Wikipedia, denoted respectively by the green and the blue. And this merely compounds the original effect. Suppose Mr. Kruger quoted directly and footnoted. Okay, this would escape the charge of verbatim plagiarism, but would still be unacceptable because it's just a mosaic. Stupid, if not quite so dishonest. Basic thing to recognize. A mosaic is not a term paper, ever, no matter how many sources one cobbles together. A third kind of plagiarism by inadequate paraphrase. Now, paraphrase per se is not an offense, and I'll talk a little bit about that down the road. It can become plagiarism, however, by virtue of dishonest intent. Go back to Mr. Kruger. In this case, he's mixed several sources and then has changed the words a bit. Okay, the example is also mosaic, though not verbatim. Nevertheless, it is plagiarism by virtue of being dishonest. There's no conceivable way in this example of inadequate paraphrase in which deception could not have been intentional. Mr. Kruger could not just have accidentally copied and pasted text. The intention to deceive is evidenced by virtue of his selective changing of a few words here and there. Once again, if any piece is copied and pasted in a term paper or a research paper or an essay, plagiarism has occurred. So, to sum up so far, different versions of plagiarism: verbatim, mosaic, inadequate paraphrase, common essence, dishonesty. Can there be such a thing as accidental plagiarism? I'm skeptical. Recall the Harvard definition above. Plagiarism is, quote, the act of either intentionally or unintentionally submitting work that was written by someone else, unquote. If whatever you're writing for any school assignment is something you intend to be your own effort, it's difficult to see how plagiarism can be accidental. They're two completely different processes. Maybe sloppiness in citation, maybe, but not clearly. Okay, that's what plagiarism is. So, what is not plagiarism? Well, We turn from Mr. Dunning-Kruger, one student, to Miss Ellen Highwater, a student of the same intro philosophy class, writing the same assignment, discussing the classic problem of rationalism versus empiricism. What's not plagiarism follows from the skepticism I just expressed above concerning whether accidental plagiarism is even possible. If you were attempting to write your own work, you'd have to go out of your way to plagiarize. In contrast to Mr. Kruger, consider Miss Highwater. Common knowledge need not be cited specifically. This is good. Miss Highwater seems to be setting forth in her own words a general account of the problem. Thus far, she has no quotations, nor does she need to. Furthermore, although she refers to specific philosophers like Plato, Descartes, etc., she's putting forth common knowledge, that is, stuff that would be known to any educated reader. Common knowledge is an exception to the otherwise general need to cite sources. And again, the Harvard Guide is good on this. There are some paradigm examples. I do suggest click on the hypertext link and consult those. Two cautions, however. Common knowledge may be common, but it has to be knowledge. If, for example, Ms. Highwater had attributed empiricist views to Plato, Plato is the arch rationalist, this would be an obvious error. And it's also good to err on the side of caution. Very few truths are obvious to common reason alone. When in doubt, cite. So, if there's a question, err on the side of caution. This brings us back to the topic of paraphrase, which I mentioned earlier. Paraphrase, per se, is perfectly legitimate. And what's paraphrase? Well, here's a dictionary definition. To paraphrase is to express the meaning of a writer or speaker, something written or spoken, using different words, especially to achieve greater clarity. In other words, what you're saying is, and this can be very effective. For example, in reductio ad absurdum, people will say, well, I know your child died, but he's in a better place, so you should be happy. And, you might respond to that by saying, well, aren't you saying to me, in other words, I like the disease because the medicine is so good? And, if you paraphrase in that way, it doesn't look, the pious expression, oh, they're in a better place, doesn't look quite so sensible as it might otherwise. And that's perfectly legitimate to do, as an example. Source text might be a little verbose. So Jose, can you see, and Bessie McCool take 4 lines to say what you might summarize very well, paraphrase in 2 lines. Now, you might want to be on the safe side and cite, Jose, can you see, and Bessie McCool, 2018, page 41, etc. But paraphrase by itself is not a problem. Now, back to Ms. Highwater. Suppose that Ms. Highwater wanted to embellish with the text in red. These are not Plato's own words, but it's pretty much a clear paraphrase of what Plato does say in the Republic about the allegory of the cave. And therefore, the paraphrase, because it's common knowledge, need not be cited. This is a clear case in which any educated reader would not be misled. Suppose now that Ms. Highwater wanted to embellish further with the text in blue. These are taken to be Locke's direct words. Actually, he may not have said this exactly. He may have said it orally, but not written it. But they're so well known. The tag phrase is most associated with John Locke. Again, no educated reader would be misled. Nothing in the mind which is not first in the senses. There's only one guy that said that. Since the direct words quotation marks are required, at least, if he actually said them, but this is the quotation that gets quoted, so you should quote it also. But since this is common knowledge, you wouldn't need to cite it specifically. Notice in this case, Ms. Highwater has added some emphasis, and she notes that the emphasis is added, and this is what distinguishes her contribution in contrast to the quoted material. As an author, and she's being an author here, she wants to emphasize the absoluteness of what Locke says, while not leaving the reader in any confusion about Locke's own view or words, at least the ones attributed to him. So that's a good thing. That's the proper way to use paraphrase and quotation. Err on the side of caution or oversight? Well, look at this example. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and every single word plus the entire sentence has its own footnote. This is just mad to cite everything. including Bill Clinton on the word is. Well, it matters what the word is. Hmm? Suppose Miss Highwater were to cite references to the two passages we looked at before in red and blue. This would not be wrong, and she might footnote in the following way. I'm paraphrasing here, but this comes from Plato's Republic, and here are the references. And here's a qualification about what I'm saying about Locke in another footnote. And that's perfectly fine. To footnote in this way would be exceptionally scrupulous, particularly during the common quotation attributed to Locke. It's not wrong. It is cautious. At worst, it's overly cautious. But again, sometimes you might just, particularly when you're a starting scholar, you might want to err on the side of too much. Later on, if you're writing as an advanced scholar for publication, some of these things are not quite so advisable. But of course, don't footnote everything. Do definitely cite direct quotations when they're long or when they're debatable. Okay, so a little farther out of the paper, Ms. Highwater has spelled out the classic conflict between rationalist and empiricist outlooks. Now she's beginning to ask some larger questions. This requires that she explore some secondary literature, which is bound to be debatable. She wants to cite here Alfred North Whitehead's famous statement about Plato, that even in modern times, all philosophy consists of a series of footnotes to Plato, end quote. Thus, in the case of sources which are either debatable or long, the educated reader is, again, left in no doubt as to who said what. To repeat, for the student who's honest and in possession of basic ideas about researches and why we do it, the question of plagiarism need not arise. And I always feel sheepish about talking about this with my students. I mean, I expect to be treated as an honest person, and I will treat other people as honest people until or unless they show me evidence otherwise. So I apologize if here I am preaching to the choir and hope indeed that that's all that I'm doing. And for the dishonest few, would they even listen? But for those who might remain confused about what research is and why we do it, seek clarification as soon as possible. I note here I have a companion video on my YouTube channel asking the question, what's the difference between research and copying? Seems an odd question, but it's not a trivial question. If you can answer this question, good. If you cannot answer this question, well, you might want to think about it a little more. This is pretty much a litmus test as to whether someone is or is not college ready. If you cannot answer this question, you are not college ready. So again, that's a major issue related to the issue of plagiarism per se. Above all, though, do not just fall into plagiarism by virtue of sloppy research and citation techniques. Verbatim plagiarism is merely stupid dishonesty. Mosaics can be stupid, whether they're honest or dishonest. So there can be degrees of dishonesty. But is there any such thing, perhaps, as smart dishonesty? I have to say, there's just a lot of preachy nonsense written about plagiarism. Plagiarism is something to be taken seriously. It is a violation of the basic norm of our academic community, which is to author what you claim is yours, not to copy, not to take, not to steal. So plagiarism is a matter to be taken seriously, but again, you can get, too kind of crazy about it. Cheaters never prosper. Really? Well, they never prosper unless they get away with it. Maybe only cheaters prosper. You also hear more piety. You're only hurting yourself. Well, no, sometimes you're hurting others. Sometimes you're helping yourself, succeeding in getting what you need. And by the way, hurting yourself and helping yourself may not be mutually exclusive. Or you'll hear people say, plagiarism is going to drag down the reputation of your school. Well, arguably not. Periodic athletic scandals don't do that. Parents paying money to get their kids admitted to prestigious schools won't do it. Academic dishonesty probably won't anymore either. However, it seems to me here's a good argument. It runs like this. If you start cutting corners in higher education, all the more so if higher ed is for you only a means toward the extrinsic end of a job, then you are instilling a pattern for the rest of your life, including your working life. And if you cut corners in pursuit of an occupation over an education, you're condemning yourself to a job for which you alone have made yourself unqualified. and with which you will be saddled and eventually come to loathe. Think about this. It's not only would you want to have a nurse who cheated through Chemistry 101, it's also would you want to be that nurse who cheated through Chemistry 101? Long before the medical malpractice suit or loss of certification catches up with that nurse, the anticipatory dread is going to be a long-standing penalty for self-imposed incompetence. You're going to hear those hoofbeats before the horses arrive. John Lennon has a good question. Why in the world are you here? Why are you in school? Well, there are diametrically opposed ways that students can look at that question. The one on the left, I'm taking this class only because it's required by my bosses. So I go through the motions. Hey, got me through K-12, but basically I don't give a crap. I'm doing it instrumentally, merely to get a grade and go on to more important things in the real world. So there, yeah. There's another possibility. One can take the attitude on the right-hand side. I'm taking this class because it fits into a long-term game plan to cultivate my life and grow myself. I'm doing this proactively, not just reacting to external degree requirements. So incidentally, my game plan has the interesting side benefit that it's going to fulfill those degree requirements and may lead to some extrinsic outcomes as well. The reason this is a good argument, if you start cutting corners, you're going to set a pattern for yourself, is that higher ed is not just a matter of jumping through someone else's external hoops. You're not going to believe me when I say this because I didn't believe my professors when they said it to me. But you have 4 short years to get a bachelor's degree. 4 short years. It's not a matter of jumping through hoops. It's a matter of inner cultivation. You got 4 short years, however you use them. So, as Kenny McJustin would say, don't blink. It goes by quickly. Once it's gone by for you, you'll look back like I do, like the rest of the professors do, and say, wow, wish I was back when, but here we are. In that time, in those scant 4 years, you will change your personality, you will acquire knowledge, you will develop habits, and this is equally true whether you do so for the better or for the worse. If you cut corners, it's your own time you're wasting, your own self-cultivation that you're studying. Just for a sheepskin? Just for a piece of paper on the wall? But so long as you're in school for the right reason, you need lectures on literature and math. You don't need lectures on academic dishonesty. So